Welcome, friends, to another scintillating episode of the Cyber Metal Podcast. How do I know it's scintillating? The guest we have today is amazing. My co-host, as always, is phenomenal. So I'm going to take a flyer out there and say it's going to be a barn burner. To that end, I'd like to say howdy and welcome. Shoot it over to my co-host, Allison Laderman.
Awesome. Thanks, Omar. Yeah, we are excited about this one. Well, we're excited about all of them, but for very different reasons. So the gentleman we have with us today is Ezekiel Zeke McReynolds. He is a cyber defense analyst and agricultural engineer, and he specializes in securing cyber, physical, and autonomous systems with experience spanning precision agriculture research, U.S. Marine Corps operational analyst, and the U.S. Air Force Data Lab anomalous detection systems. That is a mouthful. He's involved in advancing cybersecurity integration into agricultural autonomy, and his work bridges the defense, data science, and applied agricultural engineering. And before we get into all of that and why we find that absolutely fascinating and something we need to talk about, I'm going to give our usual disclaimer of, even though I'm a lawyer and these gentlemen are cybersecurity experts, they are not your cybersecurity experts, and I'm not your lawyer for the purpose of the podcast. That being said, we're here to share our experience, our knowledge, our wisdom to help you have those conversations with your team and with others in a community. Be curious, be cyber smart, and stay cyber metal. So with that, we're going to kind of bring it over to Zeke and let you, instead of me just reading a bio, share a bit more though about where you came from and how you got into this particular area and why it means so much, because it's something Omar and I've talked about a lot with people both on and offline, is that you really can come from pretty much anywhere for cybersecurity because it touched so many different facets of our lives. And I don't know that a lot of listeners ever thought agriculture needs cybersecurity. So kind of share with us a little bit how you got there and why this means so much for you.
Yeah, absolutely, Allison. And thank you for the intro. I was going to say my background is a little unconventional, but maybe in cybersecurity, unconventional is conventional,
Yeah.
bringing domain experts in to bring their expertise to apply.
Mhm.
But I actually did start as an agricultural engineer at Texas A&M. So whoop, gig 'em Aggies. There's my cult acknowledgement, where I was
Good.
working kind of an applied science data program in agriculture, things like crop health modeling, remote sensing, analytics, that modeling and simulation.
Mhm.
And then from there, I moved into an operations research position with the Marine Corps, applying deployed operational analytics, which is where this large petabytes of data of networking traffic and things, and I got pulled into doing cybersecurity, which is where I really grew this intersection of complex operational systems and cybersecurity. So over that time, I evolved to leading like machine learning efforts for anomaly detection with UAS telemetry, cyber physical systems. And now I design secure data pipelines, analytical frameworks for autonomous and electronic systems. So all real just generic, but what really it drives me to is trying to bridge the autonomy and cybersecurity world in agriculture. We are really in that space specifically, really rapidly moving towards this AI enabled tractor, drones,
Mhm.
distributed sensing networks on farms. And if we don't build that security into those systems from the start, we're going to regret what I think is an intersection of secure autonomy, applied machine learning, and protecting what is the term now, which is precision agriculture. And then for our listeners, to kind of give you a understanding breakdown of just agriculture as a whole, the beginning of our agrarian society was manual labor by the back of our own sweat. That was agricultural 1.0. We moved into agricultural 2.0, which was the use of oxen or other beasts to help us manage that land and grow our overall agrarian society. And then we've been sitting in agriculture 3.0 for a while. That happened during the Industrial Revolution, came along with the tractors. So we used machines, but had that human in the loop in a very different way, very mechanical and analog systems, to now where we are today with, in most Western societies, agricultural facilities, the manual labor is very much so on a waning side. And so we've had to get creative with developing new systems, autonomous systems, to increase the efficiency of the production of the food that we need to eat, because the population itself is also booming. You only have so much land. So the next step is, without as much labor and without as much land, How do you go about this feeding of the population? The solution that has been being applied over the past 25 years is precision agriculture. That's using remote sensing techniques. That's using big data. If we, we've all forgotten that term now that AI and ML is around. But it was a very important term once upon a time.
Yes, it will.
We can toss it into the closet with all the other buzzwords now.
Zero
And
trust.
we're being,
Cloud, on-prem, edge.
yeah,
Yeah, all that.
yeah. And so now with what we're getting to with Starlink and the ability of rapid GPS autonomous agriculture that we can have today, that brings a whole level of connectivity to the rest of the world from an operational technology that hasn't updated in some senses the rest of the farm. So, with that level of connectivity from a cybersecurity expert perspective, you're like the attack surface just grew exponentially, and now you have connectivity that can equal significant compromise. So, to distill this all down, we're trying to what I'm trying to do and understand is advancing agricultural autonomy through a resilient security first system design as opposed to bolting on the cybersecurity and the Department of No at the end.
So, you know, so what is your plan on how to get people in agriculture to transition to that system where cybersecurity gets built first as opposed to tacked on at the end?
Uh,
What are you doing to kind of help change that mindset?
Yeah, so one man isn't going to change the world, and I recognize that myself. So what I've done is, pulling in what I know, I'm bringing in my expertise, but really it's that networking piece. So there is the Autonomous Agricultural Institute at Mississippi State University, and they are doing world-class cutting edge work. The director of the institute, his name is Dr. Alex Thomason, and he back to the day of big data when he was teaching back at A&M, he used to ask us ag engineers a philosophical question, which was, how would Google farm? That was a very big question because back in that day, you really wanted to work for, the alphabet company. They were the pinnacle of the millennial dream. Go work for Google. They have the best workspace, all of those things, but because they're solving it in unconventional ways. And I wrote a white paper to him in about 2023, and I said, hey, just been doing a lot of cybersecurity things, UAS, and just got a question back to you. How would Google secure farming? Was that next step? And I was like, I'd like to get involved, find people who are doing this. And he goes, that's a great question. No one's asking that. Would you like to jump in and help write a paper? And we presented it at the AI and Agricultural Conference in 2025, and it was through the CAST Council. So Council of Agricultural Science and Technology. You can go look at it. It's an excellent, just kind of policy paper on applying AI in agriculture. And I got to help voice some of the concerns of, hey, let's bake in some of the cybersecurity and not do the fear mongering style that, used to get money back in the early aughts, truly try to bring the farmer in, the builder of these precision systems in. And so that's what I'm doing is I'm just trying to bring that voice, be that translator, because you have a dichotomy of systems right here. Cybersecurity moves really, really fast. CVEs come out every single day. There's always an issue. And then you go over to an agricultural person who has the patriarchal farmer who is 88 years old and has always farmed this way and then will always continue to farm this way. And he has his younger sons who want to maybe adapt or change some things. You can't come blazing in your Lamborghini and say, hey, I've given you this system. I need to update your tractor. And then, oh, hey, we got Patch Tuesday. So I'm going to send you this link through Starlink and you're going to need to make sure you do. So there's a very big speed dichotomy between the slow moving side of the agricultural community and the cybersecurity community that is already lighting their hair on fire with Claudebot and trying to understand what an AI agent is. And, we're just saying, hey, vulnerability management first. Let's figure out where the doors are and see if we can put some locks on them. So hopefully that answers that.
I say, where are some of the areas where you're seeing that AI is starting to be part of agriculture and farming, because maybe the audience doesn't know, and we think of it as I go to the grocery store, I get my food, and they only think of that 88-year-old farmer, right?
Yeah.
That's out there doing the patriarchal stuff. So knowing that we're shifting, kind of what is that percentage that has kind of made that shift into, we'll say big tech, right, for purpose of the conversation,
Mhm.
and moving into that AI space and more of that machine section versus not?
That, you asked for a percentage. I'm going to say right now, I don't entirely know. It varies between, agriculture is going to have a ton of different systems. So we're talking a system of systems from a backup camera on tractors now that will actually alert to the biometrics of humans and other things on there. So for an autonomous agricultural tractor, it's, increasing that safety recognition. Um, let example to the cybersecurity community, there's a lot of talk around Tesla's autonomous driving systems and how they're training them to, maybe skip a couple of stop signs or other things like that. So there is some of that AI that is being introduced into nameless agricultural tractor systems to then, we're going to flip it on its head and go like, all right, remote sensing. So you're trying to find the heat maps on a potato field and potatoes have a significantly high level of disease. People can relate to their history textbooks in the grade school. They'll remember the potato famine. This is the reason I'm an American. McReynolds is my last name, so I'm Scots Irish, and without the potato famine, I'm not here.
Yeah.
So potato blight is certainly one of those things, and you can find through infrared and other things. Hey, here's where you're getting these pockets of disease, and you can do it at a higher level. We used to use, and I'm going to use a term I'm sure even the cybersecurity people are going to groan at this, expert systems. That was the actual AI before that. That required a subject
Yep.
matter expert to come in, look through 500 crop fields and say, yep, that's a disease, that's a disease. No, that's just irrigation. That's a disease, that's a disease. We're able to flip that on its head now and use a form of machine learning that is, in my opinion, AI, because you're using those two parameters to now have the data continually learn on the images captured either through UAS drones or conventional plane, as well as understanding, hey, we have multiple acres with these larger farms. As we push out small farmers, there's these large conglomerate farmings that we're getting.
Mhm.
And so how do you manage all of your irrigation pieces? Well, it's pretty easy to understand from an infrared when water is on something and when water isn't. And so AI is really getting applied in a remote sensing technique significantly more than on the operational systems quite at this moment. From a research perspective, it's booming and it's not translating entirely into the field yet. So that's where I've seen the two biggest applications of AI within agriculture.
No, this is so much of this is speaking to me, right? Because I want to see, do I want to come at it from like a medical device angle, right? Because it's kind of, part and parcel with how that attack surface is booming and how the heck do you get your arms around it? Oh, goodness. You also spoke about we could have all this fancy approaches, but it boils back down to vuln management. That that spoke to me in my bones in terms of like, if you don't have that hygiene there, the rest of it is window dressing. I guess I'll start with, are there any surprising partners in this space where as you got in, and I know you're trying to evangelize, as you said, you're trying to bring people in. Have there been any folks that are going, yeah, we need that, or some different aspects of this where you go, wait a second, I wouldn't have thought that stakeholder would care or be this much behind my work. It's cool. I'd be interested to see like how that's kind of panning out for you.
Yeah, right now, I would say most of it's kind of at the institutional policy level and
Okay.
research institutes. Those are the
Mhm.
ones that are really wanting to get into it because when we look at it right now, it's precision ag is actually kind of breaking the mold a little bit
Mhm.
of how large, $1 million combines were being developed and built and used. You can use a whole bunch of small autonomous robots with ESP32s
Mhm.
to maybe achieve similar aspects. So I'm seeing from an ag tech, I got to make sure I don't go on too many tangents here because I have so many thoughts on all of this.
Yeah, no, that's
So
what I was trying to focus too. Like, what do I ask him? Because I want to ask about that. Ask about that. But yeah.
putting it in a bubble of critical infrastructure, which very few people actually do.
Mhm.
That's like step one.
Mhm.
A human can live for 3 days without water, super important, and a human can live for about 2 weeks without food. And I
Mhm.
had a professor tell me one time when GMOs and everything were going out, he goes, look, bad food will make you sick, no food will kill you. So there's this concept of understanding. We've got to understand, and I don't want to, change the topic too much. But so within that bubble, you have the Silicon Valley trying to do the whole investor style
Mhm.
into ag tech, and it
Mhm.
it hasn't translated because the normal system for how Silicon Valley operates
Mhm.
doesn't translate into the agricultural system for adoption and use.
Mhm.
There's been a whole lot of money into it, and not cyber specifically, but
Mhm.
you know, everyone moving fast, break things. That doesn't apply to a family's livelihood. And
Sure.
we've talked about before we jumped on here that, farmers are the getting the short end of the stick continually year after year. We're enjoying the egg prices that we get, and then we freak out when we get one bird flu. And
Yeah.
the product
Uh,
increase is still just meeting the bare minimum of
mhm.
maintaining a lot of those farms. And so to answer that, when you're saying, hey, who's interested?
Mhm.
I have seen an uptick from kind of a a DHS perspective because they're asking for
Yeah.
grants and requests and really looking to kind of research and study it and apply it. And
Mhm.
then they're going from, like I said, the Autonomous Agricultural Institute, Harper Adams University in the UK.
Mhm.
They have a big hands-free Hector is where they do all of their autonomous ag, and they're looking into it. And then we're going to go all the way over on the pond into the Australian pool, and the
Mhm.
Society for Precision Ag there, and the Grain Automate is really looking at it from a very large scale because everything right now, from an investment standpoint, is like, all right, we can do it in a vineyard, we can do it in an orchard because there's a little bit more of a cash crop value that you can get out of some of these things,
Sure.
and not too much is being applied into large scale grain production or cotton production. And so the Australians are looking at it from a, hey, we're using large UAS, we may be using large machines. How can we apply autonomy in that direction? And now they're all going, wait, we're just going to let this, tractor go. Can we figure out how it operates,
Yeah.
beyond GPS spoofing and
Yeah.
lidars and other things? What are your secondary, third systems? What are your fail safes? What is the red button stop where we can go back to doing those next things?
Just to kind of unpack that a little bit there, I wanted to, and if this is too much of a tangent, say, hey man, but we'll park that for another show. But like you're speaking about the old school farmer, right, and trying to get them maybe to get their arms around, this change is coming. These are
Mm,
ways to potentially backstop or reinforce your livelihood. The first time for me, at least in my experience, that this arena of ag tech and potentially cybersecurity applications, kind of cross paths in my mind was something you just touched on, like the right to repair, right?
mm,
Where that, and I said, wait a second. And I don't know why, like I had a friend tell me back in the day, like, Omar, sometimes you're like lightning, sometimes I don't know, right? Like, and sometimes it took like of course there's tech in farms. Wow. Right. But like, and of course there were, but was that a galvanizing moment in terms of like, is that a door through which you step through and say, listen, you have to understand the tech that's coming. We should know it, not just for the safety, but also just for your own self direction, right? Like,
mhm,
do you want to be able to even pop the hood open of, again, we'll keep it nameless, the
yes.
nameless tractors, right?
Mhm,
I caught that, and I'm being very careful. I don't want to name drop which tractors it was, but is that a place where you found like, wait a second, this is gaining, then I can gain traction with the audience? Are you coming at
yeah,
it maybe potentially from like the water perspective? Like where,
mm.
you know, like,
Yeah, from a cybersecurity perspective,
mhm,
they're kind of like a three. I use a three-pronged attack, and that's certainly depending on the audience
mhm,
who gets the for our audience the right to repair. What happened was a $2 sensor inside of a tractor shorted out, and it was a time that required a harvest. So agricultural production is a time sensitive operation, and it required an immediate fix. It required the mechanic and hired by a company to drive out to a remote location to install what it amounted to a $2 sensor. Because if you think in our today cars, let's just in our modern electric drive car that scares me in any way I think of, because
Same
I
here.
like to wrench, I like my carburetor, I like to be able to make it all happen and do it. But it's just my like cabin in the woods theories. The thing that happened, basically, you went to push start on your car and it said, hey, your tire sensor's out. I cannot start. And you're like, but the tire's full. I promise you, I'm looking at it. I got the reading. And it's like,
It's
well,
right
no,
there.
mine says it's flat. We cannot drive. This will destroy the car. And you're like, no, and you can't have an argument with an electronic.
Not
So
yet.
that was what generally happened in the right to repair. Now, I'd actually like to hand this over to Allison. If you had any context about this, I watched that play out for about 10 years from a lawyer
Oh,
perspective. Don't know if you saw that, but basically it didn't, the right to repair in the American farmer, it took 10 years before there was acknowledgement that, yes, you bought that tractor, you didn't technically lease it from us anymore. And no, you're not damaging our proprietary information. You are now allowed to work on it, because that took a significantly long time to work through. Before I hand it over to you to finish up, Omar, I'm not too worried about the gigantic companies. They do have some security going on. It's the lateral movements that I'm afraid of. The precision tech that the small startup brings in. I'm not trying to challenge a large company and saying, hey, you're not selling your genes correctly. You need to figure out how to secure it.
Sure.
They're doing something because they know, they've seen ransomware, they've seen all these things, they've seen companies go down. They not even going to try to understand what their entire SOC and going on and how they're applying their operations. I know there are things there and I know they're doing them. It's the system of systems integration that I'm actually seeing as the attack surface grows. Answer that question. Just wanted to hand it off and be like, hey, did you watch any of that play out? Like, any thoughts and perspectives on that? Because I found it irritating and fascinating.
Yeah.
so I didn't spend a whole lot of time. It wasn't something that came across my radar in my practice. But that being said, law and getting into courts is a slow process generally, right? I've seen simple cases take 2, 3, 4, 5 years, right? Now, when you add in not only technology, but just like you said, is it a right to lease? What parts do you own? What's proprietary? Are you really allowed to look under the hood? Are you invalidating a warranty the moment that you do and you start putting in different pieces, whether it's not an approved piece, but it's say like I said, it's a $2 piece. Well, is it that company's $2 piece, or did you get a knockoff $2 piece that you were able to put in there? And so, a lot of it comes down to the contract that was in place probably between the parties, and looking at what are you allowed to do, what are you not allowed to do. And really, when you get into proprietary rights and business trade secrets, that's when it really slows down the litigation process, because they want to make sure, they being the courts, that there's nothing going on that's going to hurt the intellectual property owned by, we'll say, business one, the tractor company, right? But they're also balancing that between, wanting to create a chilling effect for those using the technology in the field, right? So I think with all of that, when you get into discovery and you start getting into business rights and intellectual property, it really slows that down. And, a lot of people think, oh, I could just get in a court and it's easy. Well, basic court, even in Florida, right? You file a complaint, you then serve the person. From the time they get served, they have 20 days to at least do the initial response. Then you get X amount of time to respond to that. Then you serve discovery. They've got 30 days to respond to that without at least their first continuance, of which they're going to, and it just goes from there. And then you add depositions. And so by the time you get through it and potential mediation, if not two, that's how the years add up pretty quickly. And it really is a struggle for the courts as technology evolves as to where to draw that line as to, all right, is this helping? Is this hurting? Are we going to hurt which business are we hurting? And how do we balance whose interests really need to prevail and do that in light of existing contract law? So it can draw down that, slow down that process considerably where you're going, wait, why is this taking 10 years to get through all of that when it seems like I just want to flip the hood and put a piece in there? But there's all those considerations from breach of contracts to warranty issues, to safety issues. And then of course, intellectual property of what's actually under the hood and who owns it at that point, depending on the nature of the contract and the terms. So now I'm going to go look it up after this though, for sure. I'm going to go pull up those cases.
It was a super interesting one, and that's why I wanted to ask you, Zeke. Right? I'd imagine, but pragmatically, you brought it right back to you're absolutely correct, right? Like those established players, for good or for ill, they're kind of a known entity, right? But it's the folks that want to break into the space or that are innovating at a speed which those established players either don't have the appetite for, don't have the capability for, as you said, move fast and break things. And as we're seeing in other kind of parallel verticals, right? I mentioned med devices, but also, Internet of Things, OT, just straight up, with your water supply, with other, big time public good municipal type things. It's shocking how behind things are when it comes to just basic cyber hygiene. And in terms of, it reminds me of that meme, you remember, where it's like all these building blocks and like that one little Jenga piece is keeping, like, it's that one, like your work is the stuff keeping us from like probably eating terrible food, poisoned food, awful water,
food.
like, or no food at all. How do you, what drives you to continue to roll that stone uphill?
Wow. Well, I got an agricultural engineering degree for a purpose once upon a time, which was to be out in the field and not sinking into a desk chair. I told myself I'd never have a desk job, which is so funny. Young me's just a very rambunctious person.
Had dreams, right? Yeah. Yeah.
I had college debt I needed to pay off first. So the thing, it didn't happen overnight either. It happened in bits and pieces where I work on one thing, I go, hey, yeah, it seems a little important. I'd stash it away. And to be clear on this, there are more people than just me going, hey, cybersecurity and ag is a thing, but they're all in our own silos of excellence right now. We're all doing little bits and pieces, and we're not bringing it into a community yet. And so that's the first thing. I sleep at night right now because, to assuage everyone's fears as they're listening to this, we have not gone fully autonomous on farms. You are not going to lose your food overnight tomorrow. I can honestly tell you that we are not using a swarm of drones to go pick all of your apples right now. That would be pretty cool.
That'd be dope. It would.
Not happening, because there are plenty of hoops to jump through before we get to fully autonomous. Do I believe we will get there? Absolutely. This is not a cold fusion topic. This is not something that's gonna, we're eventually gonna get to autonomous agriculture 40 years later. I promise you, we're only 10 years away from autonomous agriculture.
It's like AI, till AI back in the day, right? That was always another winter. These next 5 years, we'll get it. And lo and behold, but you're right. It's closer for your field.
Yeah.
I'd imagine.
So the urgency is kind of stepped in now with just seeing the need for the population and the demand. I mean, I'd say COVID was kind of one of those moments for me that made me really go, I watched trade issues break down, which caused food insecurity. And for whatever reason, I have my own conspiracy theory on why toilet paper went away. Things of that nature. But the whole system of systems, from even a trade standpoint, seemed fragile. And it had me thinking, we're going to add in another layer of complexity to this. And, ransomware being, last time I checked, $10 billion, the amount of a GDP of a small country or medium country at this point. It is a booming business. To think people are not going to want to either, the way we categorize it in cybersecurity, nation state actor, cyber criminal, to curious kid, 3, 2, 1. all of those layers can accidentally cause something like the colonial pipeline being what it was. So,
Yep.
rambling a little bit, but
Oh.
those were the things that really got me to go, hey, I'm going to ask first the question and hope I find the ivory tower of excellence. I found pockets of goodness right now, and that's good. But the thing is no one's talking about it. No one's asking questions about it. We are putting in a lot of these systems and doing what banks did, doing what the military has done, which is, neat system. We're going to use it. Oh no, we didn't secure it. All right, we're going to spend $500 million. Now we're going to secure it. I
Yeah.
realized from the upfront, there's no way we are ever going to be able to do that in an agricultural system. So we have to start now because we are not the World Bank and we cannot just immediately go, all right, we're going to stop using those credit cards and bam, now we have our new touch one that's going to have a totally different encryption system. No one's going to invest in that willy nilly. So secure by design, we get the advantage as agriculture has moved slower than most anywhere else to pull in the information and abundance from the ICS and OT community, to pull in from the moving fast communities, but it's distilling it, translating it, and using a word that sometimes confuses most people, applying an ontology to agricultural cybersecurity, because you're going to have OT names, you're going to have IT cybersecurity names, and then now we're going to add in the domain that is agriculture. So that's the long-winded way of why I got so motivated to start a night job while also having a little kid. So yeah, I want him to eat fun foods and have an orange when he wants and a banana when he wants, because I get to enjoy that American wonder that is our grocery stores.
So for
That's
someone who,
beautifully said. Sorry. No. That I just wanted to say that's really beautifully said. I think I still remember when the images, right, of like competing systems where that grocery store wasn't available to everyone. And I still have, family members I remember who would come over and go, wow, this is nuts. Just like straight up walk in a Stop and Shop, stuff we take for granted. But you're right, Zeke, like it could go away, right? If this goes the wrong way, it could go away. That drove it home for me. Sorry, Allison, please take it away.
no, I was just going to keep asking questions. So you're good.
Oh, go ahead. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
To the rest of the audience, there is actually a strawberry season. There is actually a Granny Smith apple season. There
Yep.
is actually a
Mhm.
potato season. There is a cherry season.
That's right.
That's why your cantaloupes don't taste as well in different times of the year.
Well, that's why they tell you should eat what's local and in season to get the best nutrients, to have the most balanced
Yep.
diet as it goes, and to have fresher food. Otherwise, it's coming from other states and other countries. And, there's different timelines of how long it's been in the truck before it gets to you and how early they pick it and all those types of stuff. I mean, we talk about this all the time. The strawberries you get out of season now are pretty much orange and have clearly been either, I don't want to say gassed, I don't want to assume, but hastened in their ripening cycle where they're not really ripe, but the color suggests that they are, but the
That's
taste
an
would
amazing way to say that. I'm going to use
counteract that.
hastened I'm going to use that in other contexts, though, when I mean rushed. All right. Like, hey, this deadline has been hastened to an uncharitable conclusion. I desist from pushing me. That is amazing. But please take it away. That's a good point.
And Omar knows that's a much fancier way than I'd say, man, my strawberries do not taste like I mean, I used to go pick them back in South Florida. You'd come Christmas time, we go to Batten Farms, which doesn't exist anymore. And we'd literally go out on the farms and go pick the big red, juicy strawberries. And it's like, I know the strawberries that my son, who's now 20, tastes now, do not taste anything like the experience I had growing up. Like, and it's not even just, those were magic. No, they're just different in the way that we produce things now.
Magic strawberries is that's a different
Those
lane.
are mushrooms, Omar.
We're
Those are not strawberries.
Trying to keep it PG for the kids. Magic strawberry. But back to it's on the rain slick precipice of darkness, though, no? Where like if this as the tech evolves and grows, Zeke, as you said, it's coming, of course, the value prop is there. And we've seen it in other industries where this is super, super important. It's important to get right. wait, but the money took us on a roller coaster ride that now we're trying to, backstop and fill, right? I think a phrase I thought would never come out of my mouth, right? Shout out to Dick Cheney for presaging pacemakers, right? Or heart stuff, where he's like, don't put that in me. I'm not gonna, I don't know if that's secure or safe. People back in the day thought he was, cuckoo go nuts. Now, not so much. We're considering just how weird med device safety it can be. I go back to that. It's my home field, but it's small and it's like ubiquitous, which is kind of what I'm picturing mentally, right? In your space. So, we have to get it right. Else what's going to happen? And it's such a vital piece of our day to day that we take for granted.
Yeah, I'll share a personal story. I'm a type 1 diabetic and I still use pens because it takes, I mean, you probably know significantly better than I do to get it all. I mean, first of all, insulin dosing is a very precarious slope for any human being.
Sure.
Can have some very negative consequences if you get it wrong to the point of death. Just like a pacemaker. And so they're very, very precautious about how they go about doing it. But now we're getting tubeless pumps. And I know that I've been told that the US government moves slow. However, there is one industry that moves slower, and that is healthcare. And so that has been something that, I sit in the back of my head is like, well, how old is the pump technology? Are we running on Windows 95 because it took, the 10 years to get it to, and I know I'm exaggerating. It'd be an Android OS of some sort. It'd be Linux based. Let's be honest. We already know that.
Maybe you're exaggerating, but maybe not. Again, we're not going to talk about the tractor company. We're not going to talk about particular manufacturers, but just know, listeners, I'm thinking about them very meanly.
Same. So my son's father is a type 1 diabetic and has been since he was 18, and he is now he's got to be 50. He just turned 50, and he's been on a pump since we first met in 2001. Yeah. We'll just go with that. As far as like how old
we can't patch that, it'll break it. We can't patch that, it'll break it. If I'm gonna hear that as I die.
Well, and the consequences you allude to, Zeke, are 100% right when it comes to insulin and dosing and getting it right.
Yeah, definitely took us on a tangent there. Just
no, but
that's the good news for agriculture, to bring it back full circle, is they can at least move fast in fixing things. There's one thing the agricultural community, which is why the right repair infuriated its base, is, look, I got baling wire and twine. I'm just going to hot wire the sensor between the two. I know it's going to be hot. It may burn a couple of my plants for the 3 hours I have to run this device. It's just going to be fine. Yeah. So, when they are presented with a problem, they are the best problem solvers in the world because they do more with less than pretty much anyone else. So I know when rubber meets the road, they'll be able to do things, but how significant is the cost of our, hamburger at McDonald's going to cost, because I want to put it in terms for people, we say, yes, please go eat the fresh fruit and other things. I understand we're in a turmoil economy, but it does boil all the way back down to the reason the McRib comes around in McDonald's is that's when the beef price drops significantly enough for them to buy enough to put it in. So sorry to break here. They're not holding it back for any other reason than it's only economically viable when there was a really good beef season, and then they go and buy the bottom shelf beef, and that's where you get your McRib.
Listen, I saw Allison's face and I'm sad because I always get fired up when the McRib comes in. I know it's bad for me. Fully aware.
So yeah, we could lose the McRib. That's what I'm telling the audience. If you don't want to lose the McRib, we should try to figure out.
I'm okay with that.
No, Allison, no. Now it's serious. If we can lose the McRib, we got to figure this out. I don't want to live in America without the McRib. Now my wife knows that I get inordinately excited, and she's like, "You're a bum. Like, what is this?" And she tells me the same thing. They're getting bottom of the barrel. Like, this is next to shoe leather that you're putting. But
I was shocked he even said it was beef, honestly.
But the sauce.
They make sure it's beef. Like I said, there's a reason they're like, the McRib is back. And it's like, well, Good cattle season.
just
So
enough to
just
pass
enough.
the, is it like the old, how much is this burrito meat? Like sandpaper, right? Or sand. That's
Sawdust.
fine.
Sawdust.
That's
Sawdust.
sawdust. That's what it is.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
man, you got me thinking about the McRib, and now I'm hungry. See, Zeke, like, see,
Oh,
but like,
see, I went the opposite. I was like,
yeah,
I
right.
think I'm going to pass the
Well, we
dinner
were
right
talking
now.
fresh
The
food. I needed to
disgust.
bring us back to,
Bring
the
us back
American
to
lifestyle.
American, but so
Yeah.
you said
All
that
you type 1 diabetics out there, don't eat the McRib.
don't eat the McRib.
I said,
It
I
will,
imagine the sugar
yeah,
and the fillers will just like totally,
it'll
like
absolutely
Chinese
probably,
food, Italian food,
yep.
because of the pastas. And yeah, I lived with that, watching it, you know,
Hmm.
not being able to calculate it on any given day because depending
Yeah.
on what it is. Yeah, that's always fun. So for people that want to learn more and get involved in this particular nuance of cybersecurity, which is bringing in the AI security piece and the agriculture piece, what are some of the best resources for someone who wants to learn more about what it is that you do and how to get involved if that's like an area that they also find fascinating?
Yeah, there is two big pillars of resources as of right now from cybersecurity. There's the food and ag ISAC. There's all of the ISACs. They just started it. I could look it up, but mid 20s, 2023, 2024, the Food and Ag ISAC, they release a quarterly report, very, very like, hey, welcome to the world of cybersecurity. The same kind of the ISACs that you would have for any of the others, but applying it specifically. Hey, here are the CVEs that we see that are going to be applied. Here was what we saw from the uptick in the food and production, because the Japanese ransomware with the beer was one of those,
Mm,
hey, there's this, CVE of like, so it encapsulates the production side as well as the rural farming side of it. It does all of that. The secondary place I'm obviously going to propose because, working side by side with them in some cases, the Agricultural Autonomy Institute at Mississippi State University is doing phenomenal things. To the cyber audience, the way most new tech gets involved and implanted in the US agricultural economy is actually through our land grant extension services. So 1962, the Morrill Act that passed, that Florida Gators University is a land grant university. LSU is a land grant university. All 50 states have one. Texas A&M is that land grant. Mississippi State is that land grant. One of their 5 pillars that they have to do at a land grant is extension service. And so they're applying this cutting edge autonomous agriculture with the human in the loop already out on their farms, and seeing significant progress. So from just the AI enablement to the using, you only look once style imaging processing and things of that nature, I'd point you there. And then a really cool secondary website called NASA Acres, which is doing like the remote sensing side of these things. It's very, 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 very fascinating. And if people really want to see AI and ag at its best, March 31st to April 2nd, NC State is doing an AI and agricultural conference. It's the annual one they do every year. You can even pull, virtually, I think they have a virtual visit that you can then pay and visit the conference and listen to things from cybersecurity to really, really niche, like, hey, I've decided to use this activation loss function to apply onto a machine learning algorithm that made the production of this vineyard 8% better. You're looking at the whole gamut there. So there's a good start, and then of course chat with your local friendly AI bot and ignore its hallucinations and fact check it. At this point, I should tell everybody, start with AI. Don't trust it. It's Wikipedia 2.0, and go and
okay.
start there and ask your own questions. It will point you to a lot of places. And then I haven't quite gotten mine off the ground yet, but at agnon.tech, I'm doing a blog slowly that's going to be called Hack the Root, which is kind of, all right, you're doing your own
Oh,
precision garden.
yeah.
What does that look like? You're using your UAS irrigation, small irrigation systems. Where are those links? What can we get out of like an MQTT signal, and how do we capture the Wi-Fi of a weather sensor? Things of that nature for fun. balancing that while raising a newborn. Didn't get it quite off the ground in 2025. Goal is to get it off the ground in 2026. There are 2 blog posts already from last year, so I was trying to do it monthly. I'm going to set my expectations for quarterly for now, but this is the first season that I'm going to have to really grow. So, yeah, those are some resources, not all resources, and I think every other day there should be even more resources because it's a quick, fast growing and changing topic.
I love it. Well, Zeke, thank you so much for joining us. That, like we said at the beginning, it's something that when you guys reached out to us and said, "Hey, we want to talk about this," we went, "Yeah, please." This is just something that we're not hearing enough about, and yet it is a critical piece. Our food and water supply, obviously, is something we need to be taking care of, and at the growth rate of AI and the need for security for both AI and just cyber in general, mixed with that food and water supply, is just critical. So we really appreciate you sharing that with us today. Omar, you
Yeah.
have any extra thoughts too?
I'm just excited because now my wife has gotten into raise chickens. She wants to expand the farm, and she has a tech bent as well. So we're going to be waiting to see some of the blog posts here in terms of like what you get up there. When you get it out there, let us know. We'll blast it out on all channels because I feel as though there's a heady intersection, right? It's going to happen. It might as well happen safely. And the field is much richer, Zeke, for having somebody, like you and having people like you out there kind of sounding not necessarily the alarm bell, but like the pay attention buzzer before this thing needs. Hopefully we can avoid the alarm bell because it's our food. Thank you so much for taking the time, hopping on, and thank you everyone for listening. And as always, till next time, keep it cyber metal. Thank you.